Director Dickey, we're ready to start whenever you are.
Thank you. Make the land acknowledgement. I'd like to start this meeting by recognizing the homeland of the 30 First Nation communities of this area we now call the Fraser Valley Regional District, where we live, work, and learn. Important decisions that we make at a local government level can affect First Nation communities and Indigenous peoples and organizations in many different ways, both today and in the future. So as part of our collective responsibility, I commit that we continually examine the work we do to ensure that our project, plans, initiatives, and discussion are guided by the principles of inclusion, collaboration, and reconciliation. So with that in mind, I'd like to call to order the March 14th, 2024 meeting of the Electoral Area Services Committee. Ms. Kinham.
Thank you. So the first item on our agenda is your report from this morning's Regional and Corporate Services Committee meeting.
Thank you. A very quiet meeting this morning. Director Fassi offered thanks to staff for the great job they do managing the Harrison Hot Springs boat launch. And in the director's reports, Director Adamo invited people to attend an annual firefighters training exercise regarding wildfires being held at Sunshine Valley, May 3rd, 4th, and 5th. That is the extent of my report. Thank you.
Thank you. So looking for approval of the agenda, and late items.
Motion, Director Johnson. Second, Director Dixon. Discussion. Hearing none. All in favor? Contrary? Motion carries.
Item 5.1 is building bylaw and BC Building Code contraventions at 11383 Farms Road in Electoral Area F.
Okay, so if there are any members of the public that would like to speak to this issue, this would be your opportunity. Ms. Van Ness?
Thank you. I note that we have a few members of the public on Zoom with us today. So if there's somebody who would like to speak to this matter, if they want to hit the raised hand function to indicate that they wish to provide some comments. Just one more moment here. And it appears that nobody online wishes to speak to this matter.
Good, thank you. So for our second time, anyone wanting to speak to this issue, this is your opportunity. And for a third and final time, anyone wanting to speak to this issue today, this would be your opportunity. There is none, so we're looking for a motion.
Davidson, moving the motion on the agenda.
Thank you, Director Davidson. Second, Director Makahonic. Any discussion regarding this item? Director Dixon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Not necessarily this, it might be out of order here, so you can tell me that. I certainly support this motion, but what I'm wondering about is our staff are working very hard, and in my perspective, it must be challenging. When I look at this report, it's got from November 16th, 2022 to August 21st, 2023, they conducted 5 site inspections and mailed 6 enforcement letters and issued 4 bylaw offense tickets to the owner. And in those months, there still had been, no response, no contact. So my question, I guess, under comment is there a way to tighten this up? It stretches way out. It's using a lot of time. Is this currently what our bylaw enforcement process requires? Like, I guess that the question I'm asking is where are we at with that?
Sure, I think we'll have Graham Daniluz answer that question.
Thank you for that question, Director Dixon, through the chair. Our bylaw enforcement process doesn't require that we take this number of steps to get to the point of bringing a Section 56 notice to you. This file arose in September 2022, and so really it's been a year and a half since it came to our attention. And from our perspective, that's when we think about our volume of bylaw enforcement files that we carry right now, it's about 430 files. We'll add about 100 new files every year. Retire some files, but we carry on average a load of 400 or so files. We're really interested in ways to streamline our process, and we're looking at how we use, for example, ticketing to increase the motivation of property owners to comply. So in this case, you'll see we've come forward and we've issued 5 tickets for this offense with $2,000 in outstanding fines. That's something that you wouldn't have seen from us, say 4 years ago. That's this emphasis on ticketing and bringing files forward even within a year and a half to a notice. That represents us finding ways to streamline and be more aggressive on bringing these files to a conclusion. But we won't be resting here. We are quite interested in finding further ways to streamline so that the level of effort we have to put in to resolve each individual file is reduced. It's something I'd like to have more discussion with you as we go, and we owe you a process to develop a bylaw enforcement policy. That's in our bylaw enforcement work plan, and we see that policy as an opportunity to identify a template for the steps we will take on each file. And then the job of enforcement staff then would be to apply their judgment, of course, but then to follow the templated approach. And I think that'll be the next step for us in finding these kinds of efficiencies and working in ways that you approve of and you set out for us in policy.
Good. Thank you, Director Dixon. Any other discussion? Director Davidson.
Thank you, Chair. Just on that same topic, if a policy was to be developed, that would be helpful, or sorry, if it was policy or process, but anything that sort of lets us know what to expect. But one thing that I find that would be helpful as well would be KPIs. I think you can probably, I know I've looked online and there are standard bylaw enforcement KPIs out there. Bylaw enforcement as a whole is kind of an unknown to me in terms of, what turnaround time to anticipate. Sometimes it's many years before something gets to this stage. The other thing that I notice as well is that I think this is year 6 in this role for me now. I can think of one time when title was actually removed because a bylaw enforcement case was resolved, whereas we get a few of these being added, notices on titles registered every year. So in that context, it seems like, I don't know if there's more effective options out there, but anyway, just regular reporting, I think, would be helpful to know how we're doing. We get these updates verbally, but I'd certainly like to see something written going forward. Thank you.
Good. Thank you, Director Davidson. I don't see any other discussion. Just a comment. In the many years that I've spent here, it just seems that this is part of rural local government, that we have some very challenging cases and some rather undefined views of land use held by some of the public. And I think that's going to be a continuing challenge probably, but anyways, the staff are moving forward much quicker than we saw many years ago in my experience. Yeah. Okay, so on the motion, all those in favor, contrary, motion carries.
Item 5.2 is building bylaw and BC Building Code contraventions at 12790 Stave Lake Road in Electoral Area F.
Okay, so once again, if there are members of the public that would like to speak to this issue, this would be their opportunity. Ms. Van Ness.
Thank you. And once again, for our online viewers, if anybody wishes to provide a comment with respect to this, you can hit the raise hand function to indicate that you wish to speak. And we'll maybe just give our viewing audience a moment. Oh, I see one person here that wishes to speak, and we'll just have our admin team unmute themselves.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yep, please go ahead. Maybe give us your name and your address.
All right. My name is Ronald Peterson. I'm counsel actually for one of the co-owners of this property, Ludi Lin. I'm not sure if Mr. Lin is online or not. But he's the executor of the previous owner who passed away, Frank Fogarty. I understand this is for consideration of a Section 57 notice, and Mr. Lin, as executor, doesn't really take a position on it one way or the other. The structures that are on the land and the other things brought on the land were not done by him or Mr. Fogarty previous, and from his position as an owner, as an executor of the previous owner, he would just like to see the property cleaned up as soon as possible, and the ultimate plan would be to apply for a petition and sale of the property as executor. So that's really all the comment that I was wanting to make on his behalf.
Okay, thank you for your submission. Staff, did you want to speak to this issue?
Thank you, Chair. Thankful and appreciate the comments of Mr. Peterson. We share the goal of the property getting cleaned up. For us, a notice on title is one step in that direction. Once the property is cleaned up and the buildings are removed or addressed or permitted, we can move expediently to remove this title, and that will help to facilitate the partition and sale that Mr. Peterson described.
Good, thank you, staff. Mr. Peterson, did you have anything you'd like to add?
No, that's all.
Good, okay, thank you. So, for a second time, are there any members of the public that would like to speak to this issue?
Not seeing any.
For a third and final time, any members of the public that would like to speak to this issue, please?
And there appears to be no further comments.
Okay, thank you, staff. So on the motion, all those in favor?
Davidson moves the motion,
Seconder.
the agenda.
Director Davidson moves, second, Director Dixon. Excuse me. Speaking to the motion, Director Davidson.
Thank you, Chair. Just for those of you, if just for your information, this was a meth lab that was a very significant meth lab that was raided. One of the ongoing concerns of residents is whatever toxic materials may be remaining on site. And while I understand that things like pollution are the purview of other government agencies, when it comes to notice of title, is my question through to staff on this, is there any mechanism to ensure that, for example, that there's no contaminated soils or anything like that in that notice on title? Or do we have to basically stay out of Ministry of Environment's backyard on when it comes to a notice on title? Thank you.
Okay, just point of clarity here. I believe that would be an alleged meth lab.
Well, I mean, it alleged, and sure, it made the news. Significant quantities of the quantity, jaw-dropping amounts of meth were being
Okay.
produced there.
I
So,
think we get the idea. Thank you, Director Davidson. Staff.
Thank you, Chair. The regional district bylaws don't regulate the contamination of the ground. Our role is to engage with the provincial legislation that contaminated sites to forward information so that the site can be flagged as a potential contaminated site based on the history of the use. But beyond that, it's not our role to engage with or to test for contamination or to oversee the remediation of site contamination or to withhold the removal of the notice, say, based on remediation of contamination on the site.
Okay, good. Thank you for that explanation, staff. Director Davidson. Good. Okay.
I'm good. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Davidson. Not seeing any other discussion on the motion. All those in favor? Contrary, the motion carries.
Thank you. So moving to item 6.1, we have a delegation on the emergency management plan.
Welcome, Ms. College.
Thank you. We also have our consultant Stephanie Hooker from Torpy Consulting online with us today. So I'm going to give you a couple slides. I'm going to hand the floor over to Stephanie for a few more minutes and then I'll close out our presentation. You're all aware that we've been working towards an updated emergency management plan while doing that work, ironically, without the new legislation. And so I'm grateful to be able to have brought forth the knowledge that we learned through engaging in the Union of BC Municipalities Flood and Wildfire Advisory Committee. While we didn't know the legislative language, we had some ideas about the policy directions that we could anticipate. Our emergency management plans, policies, and procedures are vetted firstly or pre-approved, considered for alignment with board policies, principles, and ideas, as well as the corporate strategic plan through our Emergency Management Executive Committee. I provide the responsibilities of the Emergency Management Executive Committee in this slide as a reminder of what that body of work is. And while it meets twice a year, it does look at what we're bringing forth to your team so that we can make sure that we are in alignment with those goals. We have two documents that are part of this tandem project. We'll touch on this one, or we can ask questions related to the hazard report further on. This item is further on today's agenda. But ultimately, we've assembled a hazard report from more than 1,000 geotechnical hazard reports that FVRD has on file from our planning and land use portfolios. As well, we worked with a proponent who has access to far greater geohazard databases than we would ever have access to. And so the hazard report assembles a really common overview of high-level understanding of geohazards. And we wanted that to be visually appealing, publicly readable, and understandable by anybody, regardless of scientific language. Neither the EM report nor the hazard report or EM plan prescribe specific methodology, and we don't use a specific methodology. So what we commonly hear in public media about hazards, risks, and vulnerability assessments by the province, we opted not to use that prescribed methodology and instead use hazard data. The HRV process is a very cumbersome public engagement process, and it actually engages on how people feel about hazards, less so than how the scientific realities of hazards impact us. We are required under the new Emergency and Disaster Management Act to have an emergency management plan. That's an emergency management plan, not an emergency response plan. There are many components still yet to be known, of course, and you've heard me touch on those in the past. Subject to the regulations, there are some responsibilities we must implement. We still don't know what those regulations are, and they haven't yet been developed. The content of an emergency management plan, some is very clear in the legislation, and other components, again, are waiting for us to understand them further through regulation. Our emergency management plan is required under legislation. It is to encompass an all-of-government approach. It is to cover 4 phases of emergency management: preparedness and mitigation, response, and recovery. This plan, while it looks really beefy, is very high level. It essentially touches on the things FVRD does every day and how those things may link to emergency response when we activate, or may be potentially used as tools in emergency recovery. By being able to look at what we do every day, we already know what we're good at. We can understand where we might perceive threats to our programs and our services. What you will see through this plan are the community profiles, and you might have looked at some of those maps and thought, that's not the way that I understand my community. So I'll leave that for just a moment. Ultimately, this plan is not more than what we already had before. It is different. It is lean and focused. And in the absence of what you see right now, lacking a heavy undertone of First Nations, it is respectful of Indigenous governing bodies, and it makes space for us to understand what our responsibilities are under the Indigenous engagement requirements set forth in the legislation, and further policy tools to be released by the Emergency Management ministry. In addition, the board has already approved that we would move forward with the Indigenous Engagement Requirements Fund. And so we don't know yet exactly what that work will look like. And so as you're reading through both the hazard report and EM plan, I want you to be thoughtful about knowing there is still a body of work yet to come. The emergency management plan was built this way because we wanted it to be public facing. We've had the same emergency management plan in FVRD since 2013. It's a series of checklists, and it doesn't work for the staff in this organization, and it doesn't work for our public in any way, shape, or form. And when we bring outside agencies into our EOC, it doesn't work for them to help understand our communities and their response activities or prioritize the response activities on our behalf. This plan is designed to be educational, e-reader friendly, and it is a series of tools. It is not a series of prescriptions. It's straightforward to maintain, and again, it integrates every business unit that we have. I'll give the floor to Stephanie, and Stephanie, if you'd like to just say next, I'll click the next slide when you're ready.
Thanks very much, Trina. Can you all hear me?
We can.
Okay, great. So thanks for having me at your meeting today. It was my pleasure to work on this project and to work with the FVRD team. I could spend 2 hours talking about the EM plan, but I have promised to keep it to a tight 10 minutes. So I will get right into highlighting some of my favorite usability tools that are embedded in the plan. If we go to the next slide, please. Okay, so my first item that I just want to highlight is that this document has been designed with a lot of usability and ease of navigation. And that's because, as Trina said, it is public facing, and the idea is to get the public engaged with the FVRD's emergency management program. So first of all, the document meets accessibility standards that are now required by law, meaning that it is usable and understandable for the majority of people with or without disabilities. So the meaning conveyed and the functionality available is the same. So for example, if somebody who is visually impaired is reading this document on an e-reader, each of the diagrams is going to be, there's an audio description of them, and everything is very straightforward. And so there's nobody left behind in emergency management across all 4 phases of that: mitigation, preparation, response, and recovery. We also worked with the Beacon Design Collective to make this document as user-friendly and easily navigable for 3 main groups. So as I said, one is the public. We wanted to make this approachable for the public or the general reader, and that's to invite understanding and participation from the public across all 4 phases of emergency management. This is especially crucial as climate change increases the frequency and severity of emergencies. The responsibility for preparing, mitigating, and responding to those emergencies is going to fall on all of us. And this is a document that I'm hoping will really be engaging to the public reader. The other audience that it's really user-friendly and easily navigable for is emergency management staff. So in an emergency, those anxiety levels can really ratchet up and make it difficult to process just all of the information that is coming in. So easy navigation and embedded tools assist the people who are in charge of managing those emergencies. So this is especially useful for people within the FVRD who might be called to serve in emergency management roles in an EOC, for example. Or, as Trina mentioned, if you bring in outside agencies or outside contractors, if you parachute people into the regional district, into an EOC to perform functions, this document will help easily orient them. And then the other group that it's really designed to be user-friendly for are those who are outside of the FVRD emergency management program, but are part of delivering the EM service. So for example, this could be other departments within the FVRD. It could be elected officials like yourselves. It could be other agencies with jurisdictional responsibilities, such as improvement districts or ministries of transportation, things like that. And so it's easy for those folks who are outside of your organization to easily and efficiently locate the relevant information that they need. So if we could go to the next slide, I did want to pop through some of my favorite tools that are embedded within the document. So we'll just advance the slides there. Perfect. Thank you very much. So the first tool that I want to highlight is my favorite in the document, actually. It's the community profiles. And so as Trina mentioned, the EM plan is not meant to be an operational plan or prescription of what to do in specific situations. It is an all hazards plan, and so we provide the tools embedded in the document to assist the FERD through each phase of emergency management using an all hazards approach. Oh, we'll go back one slide, pardon me. There we go, perfect. So on the community profiles, we're just going to do a little zoom around and explore these profiles a little bit and why they are providing the kinds of information and how that information might be used. So for example, the map boundaries and statistics, these are taken from the census profiles. So the map boundaries are taken specifically from there. And then the statistics are also taken from Stats Canada. So we know that statistics are just a snapshot in time. And in the event of emergency next month, things could be slightly different. However, it gives us some very important situational awareness and information to begin from as a starting point. So for example, on this page, you will see that the infrastructure lists quickly identify what the FERD is responsible for in terms of infrastructure, water, septic, things like that. And other infrastructure and their responsible entities. So if there is a water system that half of the community is on that's been compromised, this will quickly orient you to what that infrastructure is and who's responsible for it. Similarly, the list of self-support amenities gives us a snapshot of the types of resources that could support individuals and communities, including trapped visitors and tourists, especially if the community is cut off by an event. So this is going to help your team understand how little or how much they need to start supporting people in community or when to bring in outside supports. The other types of infrastructure that's listed are things like community buildings that could be activated for evacuee support services or for incident command posts. And then also on this page, there's some short written sections. Again, these are just short and brief, and they're meant to provide quick situational awareness. So on this page, we have some written sections about geography and demographics. So this gives us information about community layout, this community's relationship to other communities. Other information we can glean from this are things like the number of children who may be away from their parents during an emergency event. And if there are significant cultural and language populations that may benefit from translation efforts or culturally appropriate information and services across all 4 phases of emergency management. So some examples from my previous experience being parachuted in to support communities would be translations of evacuation alerts, orders, and rescinds. So on all of these community profiles, if there's a language group or an ethnic group that makes up more than 10% of the population, it's been noted so that your teams can quickly become oriented to that and start factoring in culturally appropriate or language supports. So in the past, I have brought in language speakers to convey critical information. We've done translations, like I said, of evacuation alerts, orders, and rescinds. We've also been careful to select the most appropriate people for door knocking and in-person messaging. So that can be important. Other things we've come up against, just knowing some of these demographic situations, is finding larger spaces for intergenerational families to shelter together. We might glean from some of this information that, how to procure appropriate food, such as kosher or halal food. And then there might be some culturally appropriate things that come up from this that we might glean. For example, in the past, in Indigenous communities that I've been called to assist in, we've utilized aunties for contact tracing during the pandemic. That was very effective. And some other situations where we have been careful in Indigenous communities to not house evacuees in work camps or institutional settings wherever possible. And so, this might just look like a map page with some statistics on it, but your emergency managers and your emergency management department is going to be able to pull a lot of information from these pages, from this tool, depending on the situation or the phase of emergency management that they're in. So if we go to the next slide. Perfect, thank you. So this is a circle graph or a vulnerability assessment. This is one of my favorite parts of the community profile tools because I think it helps responders, it helps planners. It's also a great tool for residents of this community to understand their own vulnerabilities. So the circle graph is both a vulnerability score and a quick reference for key information. So the circle graph ranking methodology is sort of described more fully at the beginning of this section. So once you become familiar with the methodology, then it's really easy to flip through each of these communities and compare and contrast their vulnerabilities, and then use this quick reference information to start understanding how to move forward in each phase of emergency management. So just to give you a quick overview, the more complete the circle, the more filled in the circle is, the less vulnerable the community is to an event. So there's also a lot of pertinent information here, and it is really easily accessible. So think about, especially in the event of an emergency, so in that emergency response phase, there's some really quick orientation and situational awareness that's provided in these circle graphs for your emergency managers. So one quick example is that, let's say I needed to evacuate people immediately due to an imminent threat. I could look at this circle graph and I could see that I have pretty good cell coverage to issue an alert through the Alertable app. I may not have FERD staff in this area, and Boston Bar is quite a far distance from headquarters, so it could take a while to get people up there to do evacuations. But if I need to act immediately, I can, depending on the type of emergency and the time of year, I can immediately request to mobilize door knocking support from personnel already in the area, such as the Boston Bar Volunteer Fire Department, the RCMP that's stationed there, the ambulance staff, the community paramedic, and BC wildfire staff. And I can request to mobilize Hope Ground Search and Rescue to come from outside the community. So you can see, although this is a really clear graphic, it's got a lot of important information. And so it can also be used across other phases of emergency management. And we'll get to that in just a second. So if we could go to the next slide, please. So once again, just zooming around these community profiles, there is a housing evacuation and community considerations portion to it. And I think, you might look at this and think to yourself, well, housing statistics are very general, and the census is only done so many years every so often. And so how important is this going to be in an instance of in the instance of an emergency? And so I would say, like, to your emergency managers, to your planning department, there's actually some very useful information that can be gleaned from this section. So some examples would be, your building age distribution. Information that can be gleaned from this is the value of the properties, the likelihood of insurance coverage, the likelihood that they are conforming to current building code, and their general resilience to different types of events. And so an example of that might be what might the air quality be like if older homes that likely contain asbestos and lead paint are incinerated in a nearby community? What might the earthquake resilience be for older types of buildings? And how might that impact your evacuation decisions? So as you start to think of those various situations that you might be in across all 4 phases of emergency management, you start to see that the information you can glean from this will influence decisions and objectives. So more examples of information that can be gleaned from this tool: how many homes are occupied? How many are vacant? What type of structures are there? Are they serviced by an FERD water or sewer system? Is there another utility purveyor or improvement district that needs to be considered? Are they owners versus renters? This information has implications for designing community resiliency initiatives, providing evacuee support services, and for recovery planning and disaster financial assistance. So once again, the whole purpose of these community profiles is to just provide really quick and effective situational awareness, especially during those times where anxiety might be high and it's hard to making it much harder to process a lot of information at once. Evacuation and community considerations. We can see that there is no public transit to support evacuees, and that school buses for those approximately 35 children are dispatched out of Hope. It's pretty critical information for both emergency planning and preparedness, and also response. We can see that the community has access and egress via the highway, so that's great. But if that highway is closed, there is no alternative road system. So that's also important to know. We can see that there's a private helipad and there's an FERD owned airstrip close by. We can see that there's a resort close by that may be affected and other travelers on the highway that may be impacted, but that there are self-support amenities in the community, including a bottled water supplier and buildings that could function for evacuee support services or an incident command post. So we can see that there's a likelihood that events that impact this community are likely to impact several other nearby communities and may require integration and coordination with neighboring First Nations. So in that 2-page spread, we're getting a lot of information between that can be used across all 4 phases. So if we go to the next slide, please. Oh, no, the next slide. Beautiful, thank you. So now imagine how useful these circle graphs could be, these community profiles could be, if a dozen communities are impacted all at once. So if you have 12 communities, such as during the atmospheric river event, all impacted at once, it doesn't matter how familiar your FERD staff are with each of these communities, that is too much information to hold in your mind at any given time. And so you can come to these community profiles, you could basically print off 12 community profiles, slap them up on the wall, review them with your team, and have really quick situational awareness of where that community is in the world, the type of people living there, the type of infrastructure that's there, and the types of vulnerabilities and the types of assets that you have that can be employed for that particular situation. So, and it would only take minutes. So this is a really huge tool, and I have really gone through it quickly. So there's a lot more to it, but I think those are some great highlights to help you understand how these profiles can be used by both the public and by the staff. So I've talked mostly about emergency response uses, but in combination with the decision-making tool in part 4, we can also start to make decisions and develop objectives across all 4 phases of emergency management. So using just these community profiles and the tool in part 4, we can start to think about mitigation, preparation, and recovery, as well as response. So if we go to the next slide, perfect, thank you, Serena. I just want to show you this. This is a tool that I'm really pleased about because it is so simple. Anybody can use it. And by anybody, I mean anybody who's a resident in one of your communities, a person on staff who's just thinking about the future or wanting to know how they can support, and also your EOC team, your emergency managers who are brought in at a very critical time. So it's designed to be very user-friendly and free of jargon, and that's to make it very approachable, especially for the general public. It's also really important to keep things simple, and where I think this is going to come in particularly handy for the FERD is to assist your EOC team when a calamity happens and those emotions are running high. So keep in mind that many of the people who are pulled in to fill operational roles in an EOC are not emergency management practitioners in their day jobs. They might be pulled in from parks, they might be pulled in from engineering, they might be pulled in from accounting to serve as emergency managers for a large, broad scale event. And their friends and family may be impacted by that same event that they are now supposed to manage. So it could be that your more experienced team members are cut off and they're not available in those first critical moments in your EOC. It could be that you're bringing in outside contractors to assist who are not familiar with your communities. So in those first critical moments, this tool is specifically designed to facilitate a team in developing situational awareness, set your initial objectives, and understand who their response partners are and who to coordinate with. It is simple, it is straightforward, and is intended to assist through those anxious and emotional first stages of an emergency. So the way you combine this with your community profiles, for example, is so the profile that I threw up for an example was our first one in the list, that was Boston Bar. So if there was an emergency event in Boston Bar, you would take the Boston Bar community profile, and the goal state is the circle graph that's in that community profile, that pre-event situation. And you would put that, you would fill that into that first circle in this tool. And then, in the second tool, in the second graph. So that would be your goal state, would be to get back to the pre-event situation. And then as a group, you would talk through, well, what is our situation after this event? And is it, what has been impacted? Has communications been impacted? Has access been impacted? And you would put that in. And right there, you can see if we want to get back to the pre-emergency state, here's where our gaps are. Okay, now what are we going to do about it? And who do we need to coordinate with? And are we in a lead role, a facilitating role, a partner role, or a communication role? Because there's a lot of people that are going to have jurisdiction during an emergency response. So this has been designed for those emergency managers who are dealing with that fire hose of information and who might be having just a lot of heightened anxiety and emotions during any typical emergency response phase. However, it can also be used by the general public. So a really good example is during the mitigation phase or the preparation phase. You could go out to your communities. You could do a community meeting where you throw up their community profile, talk through their particular situation, gather intelligence from that community, and then work with them to set goals, just using this simple two-page tool to set goals and objectives to make their community more resilient to the impacts of emergency events. So it's designed to be very simple and useful, but it is one of my favorite tools in the entire emergency management plan, and it works really well with those community profiles.
Yeah, I'm going to pause you there for just a moment.
Go ahead.
I'm being advised that we're pushing our time window and we should jump to questions. So if we can jump to our next slide, please. We've got 3 more slides and I'm going to do a hot dump run through if we can. Does that work?
That sounds great. They are much shorter.
Fantastic. So what you see here are how we assemble our 4-phased approach in emergency management by integrating the services within FVRD. We demonstrate that we actually don't need to do all these things in emergency management as our service, but we do them already in our day jobs. And so this is how we link to meet the legislative responsibilities of a 4-phased emergency management program without actually doing more than and without creating new things. I hope that that's helpful, and I'm happy to answer questions after. As far as, next slide, please. Sorry, our clicker is not functioning here. I'll leave that page with you. I think you've got the plan attached to the agenda. Again, you can ask questions on this. We've described the departments and services we offer in each of those 4 phases. We've got document libraries that link what we've got to do, manage and maintain, and this prevents our documentation from going stale. It also prevents us from making new plans for things that emergency management shouldn't actually be planning for because they're already planned for under other statutes. This is the overarching legislative library, essentially, that governs EMs as a service, a program, and as a provincial responsibility, as well as a local responsibility. We've got one for each of the 4 phases. Next, how do we maintain it? We have a standard process for maintaining it that is very straightforward, small amendments routinely. You could anticipate probably twice a year we'll do a small amendment to update things that don't exist in community or that are new in community. And of course, manage and update our critical information pathways. One more slide. We still know that we have Indigenous engagement requirements. We've described Indigenous communities as it relates to evacuation considerations, but we have a lot still to learn in this space, and we look forward to figuring out what the Indigenous engagement requirements fund, man, that's a title, are as it relates to our responsibilities. Next slide. What next? So here we are today presenting a series of documents to EASC. It will rise next through board. If you are supportive, we need to await those regulations to understand them more, scan for future funding, and continue with our training and exercise development as well as Indigenous engagement. And while I haven't written it here, our public resiliency, emergency preparedness, community facing program, which is still part of our emergency management program policy. And I give you the question period. Thank you, Stephanie.
Good. Thank you, Ms. Hooker and Ms. College also. Directors, any discussion? Director Castle.
Thank you, Chair Dickey. I'd like to move the motion.
Okay, move Director Castle, second, Director Dixon, discussion, Director Castle.
Thank you. I appreciate the walkthrough and how you were able to demonstrate how the tool can be used. And I think it's a very valuable resource. And I love the fact that it's going to be accessible to the public, which means that other agencies are able to access it and use it as it's intended. Just a few points from the report itself. It did mention in the report that there's residents should not expect assistance within 72 hours, and it could be up to 10 to 14 days. And I just want to make sure that we are getting that message out to people. I think that 72, when I read it in the report, that 72 hours suddenly popped back into my head. And I think it would be a really great idea if we can make sure that that messaging is definitely out there. I encourage my fellow directors, I think with the community profiles, I think having access to local knowledge with those community profiles is very useful and valuable to the report. So I would encourage my fellow directors to go through those community profiles. And if you see anything that doesn't seem right or is missed or categorized incorrectly, that we offer that information to our staff so that they are aware of those aspects. And just my last point is I am also very anxious to learn about the Indigenous engagement. I do understand that some of our First Nation communities do have their own emergency management plans, and I look forward to learning more about how we can collaborate and work together with our Indigenous communities to ensure that all people in our areas are safe in the event of an emergency. Thank you for the report.
Good. Thank you, Director Castle. Director Johnson.
Thank you, Chair. Again, yes, I'd like to thank you. It's really well done and appreciate all the countless hours, obviously, you've put into this. One correction, if I may, on page 10, under Area A, North Bend, the Joan Blakeboro Museum and Community Center, it is not, the ownership is not the Boston Bar North Bend Enhancement Society, but in fact belongs to Halleck Community Building Group Limited.
Thank you. I'll take a list of corrections and we'll get all of the corrections necessary in our next update. Thanks.
Good. Thank you, Director Johnson. Director McMahonic.
Really appreciated this, and I think it's extremely well done, and thank you for it. I just finished an exercise with another organization where we piloted emergency management and business continuity, and it's a sector. And so we were one of 5, and now it's moving out. And some of the challenges that we had, and a couple that we're still kind of stuck on, were an example is trying to connect into current emergency services. Well, and it would be the municipality, not the Fraser Regional District, Israel Regional District. So trying to get a hold of, so just looking for, so as we're putting these things together, so an example would be having busing, and how do we arrange to have that? So say if you had houses that were women and children, or you had seniors So you have specific groups that may not be, you know, the best fit for regular shelters and that, but trying to put these things in place. So we are finding it difficult to find anyone willing to even talk to us about putting these things first, but and so that we can get ourselves done. So transportation and how to plug in. And when these were done, was this done, I guess, just with a gender-based lens, so that if you have women's shelters and things like that, so that those are factored in, because it's not safe a lot of times for women to be in a shelter where they're going to potentially run into an abuser or someone unsafe. So those were the two questions that I had with that. But I think for our region, I'd like to go over it for the area E, and just kind of go through it a little bit more of a fine tune. It's really interesting to see the work and how it kind of extrapolates out. But those are the questions I have. So thank you.
Thank you. Through the chair to Director Makahonic. They're great questions, and staying in the scope of what we're here for today. This plan is specific to our electoral areas, electoral area residents and businesses. It doesn't touch point into the jurisdiction of our municipalities. Your questions are very valid. And I would say that confidently there are provincial level processes where municipalities can touch point into supports, but it's up to those municipalities to connect with you on those answers.
Yeah, so if we're not getting a response, what would you recommend? Not want to put you on the spot.
Yeah, maybe we can connect offside. I have no jurisdiction. We, as an electoral area services committee and for emergency management planning and service, don't have any correlating components to municipalities. They run and manage their programs independent of us and independent of our oversight.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Good. Thank you, Director Makahonic. Director Adam.
Thanks very much. Thanks, Stephanie. Thanks, Tarina. Very well done. A lot of good information there. A couple things that are coming to mind, really. A number of things other than the inaccuracies to my own area in terms of numbers and First Nations numbers as well, that they're not included in some of this stuff, where it shows that I may have a population of 750. I really have just over 2,000, that I discovered an extra 450 people yesterday while meeting with the chief of the Chihuahua band. A couple of other things as well. There's nothing in here in terms of in the research or in the studies of pets or livestock. And I represent areas with big pet populations and livestock pet populations throughout all of Laidlaw as well. Is that going to be incorporated in that? And where does that come into in this emergency management positioning? And what else did I have? Yeah, we'll go through all of the discrepancies with respect to physical sites that really aren't there or haven't ever been there and things like that in my area. So is there a timeline for us to get this information to you before an actual finalized document would be published for the public?
If you'd like to send them to me by email, I'll take them.
Okay.
I won't give you a deadline right now. This is a stretch the budget, shall I say, to the bandwidth. And so we'll do the next update through staff updates on this plan.
Great.
In regards to pets are an average understood component within emergencies. People have pets, people come with pets. We have operational considerations where we don't need to address them in a high overarching plan. We can determine when an emergency happens and affects a community, whether we need pet safe spaces, whether we need non-pet safe spaces. They're operational considerations for sure, and they are factored into the evacuee services considerations.
And with respect to livestock counts and things like that, how does that
That's a
enter into it?
complex topic. Ministry of Agriculture has primary responsibility for agricultural, again, operational, but there are a myriad of provincial policies, both within EMCR as well as the Ministry of Agriculture. And we typically tap into the Ministry of Agriculture to join us in our Emergency Operations Center and help us with the evacuation of livestock.
Thanks.
Good, thank you, Director Adamo. Before we move forward, staff, is it possible to drop the blinds behind Ms. College? It's difficult for people to see here. Thanks. Director Davidson and then Director Dixon.
Thank you, Chair. So, yeah, great content. It's kind of a pet peeve for me on formatting. On the when you're looking at the PDF and you've got 2 pages side by side, I find you need either a combination of large monitor size and good eyesight to be able to comfortably view 2 pages side by side on a screen. For my own setup and eyesight, I won't get into which is which. I fall below that threshold. So for me to be able to read that document, I have to zoom in, scroll, slide side to side, and then jockey around a bit to be able to work my way through it. I'm pretty sure I'm not going to be alone when I think of other members of my community in that. So while I see the benefit of having a 2-page side-by-side community profile that goes up on the wall during an EOC session, for the people at home, I'd very much like to see sequential pages and not the side-by-side format. I don't know if that's doable. The other thing is that just a question through to staff that the areas that have been spoken to, the neighborhood profiles, and this is where I'm not entirely sure what's happening in EDMA. I've heard rumors that we have to do the planning for crown lands in some fashion, and of course that's a whole other area. Area F, and would include something like a logging camp in the upper pit watershed. I'm just wondering if staff could speak to the crown land requirement, what they know and what they expect, and where are we with that? I have one more other comment after that. Thank you.
Through the chair to Director Davidson. Public presentations are going to be a component of our public resiliency and education program as well. And so we opted to go for the 2-page spread because it's going to become more effective when we're engaging in community preparedness, less so than just the visual appeal on a personal document. We can always zoom in on a page, but we can't as easily see both pages together if we opted for the single-page portfolio rather than the spread. In regards to neighborhood profiles, thank you, noted. In regards to crown lands, totally understandable. There's a lot of interpretation happening province-wide right now. It was very clear through the province's regulatory discussion paper that they were seeking feedback from regional districts specifically that would allow them to identify ways to limit our responsibilities to crown land. There is no assumption that we will undertake emergency management planning on crown lands. We have been empowered with the opportunity to exercise powers. So say we knew that we needed to close an area that was slightly populated with recreational cabins, we're empowered to exercise our state of local authority powers in the crown lands. We're not expected to provide responsibilities on those crown lands for emergency planning. As well at the same time, the province is currently in midway through its own project to do a provincial risk assessment, and that includes their oversight of crown lands.
Okay, thank you. So just going back to the format again, while I see the benefit for printing it for public meetings, when the public meetings have passed, it'll be electronic access. So I don't know if you can do it both ways. I'm sure a wall board and a public meeting can be formatted. You can take 2 single pages and put them side by side. But anyway, I think most of the access most of the time is going to be electronically. So I just hope you guys keep that in mind. It sounds like from Director Adamo's comments that there are some errors in there. And I know we have a motion before us to endorse the plan. If we're to go through it and look more closely for errata, does it make sense to refer back to the next EASC, or I'm just curious procedurally if we have to go through it more closely and look for some things. Timelines back to you. Do we refer the motion? What makes sense?
I'll take this one actually through the chair to Director Davidson. From staff's perspective, this document is always going to be an evergreen document, and there will always be updates required in every one of those sections. There are community resources that may open and close over time, and it will be staff's intention that they will constantly be refreshing this document. I would not necessarily recommend that we delay endorsing it if that is the committee's wish, on the premise that there are some edits that need to be made. I think that there are always going to be edits that need to be made, and if we don't endorse it, we never will endorse it if it's based on that premise.
Good. Thank you, Ms. Kinnaman.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director Davidson. Director Dixon.
Thank you, and thank you for the presentation and the document. Obviously, all kinds of work has gone into this. So the fact that you seem to have captured most of what's in our areas is really quite miraculous, actually. I wanted to thank you for in area H anyway, the community considerations where there's comments in the boxes about the impact of seasonal population as well. And just kind of being aware of that. And so I do have a couple of items that I'll email you. Just they're not huge. It's just that there might be things you wish to include in there, but overall, thanks very much. Great document.
Thank you, Director Dixon. And I would just add that thank you, Ms. Hooker and Ms. College. Obviously, this has raised our standards on how we respond to emergency management issues within the Rouge Valley Regional District, and looks like a very fine piece of work. Good. So on the motion, all those in favor, contrary, the motion carries.
Thank you.
Thanks again.
So moving to item 7.1, we have the draft Electoral Area Services Committee meeting minutes of February 8th, 2024.
Okay, promotion, move Director Dixon, second Director Wardenberg. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, contrary, motion carries.
Item 8.1 is an information item. It's the draft Emergency Management Executive Committee meeting minutes of February 29th, 2024.
Okay, so I don't see a motion.
I'm just happy to answer any questions if there were any.
See any, we'll move forward. Thank you.
9.1 is the Fraser Valley Regional District Public Notice Bylaw number 1741.
Okay, promotion, move Director Johnson, second Director Castle. Discussion, Director Castle.
Thank you, Chair Dickey. I appreciate that we're moving towards an approach that allows for flexibility for communication through our electoral areas. And I look forward to working with staff to create policy to guide how we communicate in specific areas. So thank you for this. I look forward to working with you to create the policy.
Thank you, Director Castle. Director Davidson.
Yeah, I'm concerned a bit about the timing of this, in that, you know, we passed the bylaw, we stopped posting to the newspaper. Will the public notice policy be fully cooked by then? And if it's not, that creates the risk that we're essentially under communicating from where we are today. My hope would be is that whatever we do going forward, either, you know, meets or exceeds the outreach, and that gets into questions like, you know, how many page views do we have? What's our traffic on our website? Are we basically cutting out a bunch of people if we go straight to posting on our website and kill the newspaper ads? So my own comfort level would prefer to see the public notice policy develop first before we give 3 readings to the new bylaw. But I'm just wondering if staff have any thoughts on that they could share.
Good. Thank you, Director Davidson. Ms. Van Ness.
Thank you. Through the chair to Director Davidson. So the motion before you is 3 readings of the public notice bylaw, as well as a motion for staff to direct that, or sorry, staff to draft that policy. The intent here would be 3 readings and we would do a pause. We would bring it back. We would work to develop that policy and we'd bring it back for adoption. Sorry, the bylaw back for adoption as the same time as the policy as a set. Yes.
I'm good. Thank you.
Thank you, staff. Thank you, Director Davidson. Director Down.
No, that pretty much just answered what I was going to ask.
Good. Thank you, Director Downwell. It appears that the way we approach this is going to require quite a bit of flexibility on issues and electoral areas, but I'm sure we'll be able to work this out. Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor, contrary, the motion carries.
Item 10.1 is 2023 grant and aid request for Indigenous Culture Camp in Electoral Area C.
Director Wardenberg moves. Do we have a seconder? Director Adamo seconds. Any discussion? See that, Director Dixon.
Thank you. I guess my discussion is, looks like a pretty important activity. However, it's also relatively closed. Is that this is only open to I gather Indigenous youth. So I'm just wondering how this fits in with our grant and aid policy.
Sure, maybe we'll just turn things over to our Deputy CFO, Beth Klein.
Yep, so it is open to everyone to attend the ceremony. So it's a community event that is available to everyone in the Area C.
Good. Thank you, Ms. Klein. Thank you, Director Dixon. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, contrary, motion carries.
11.1 is the Fraser Valley Regional District Water Supply Systems Regulations Fees and Charges Amendment Bylaw number 1742.
Motion. Director Johnson, second. Director Damo, discussion. Hearing none, all up. Director Castle, go ahead.
I just have one quick question. Droche water system, metered users, do we have any?
None of our users are billed on a metered basis.
All right, thank you for that answer.
Thank you, Director Castle. Director Damo.
Thanks very much to the chair. So I'm in support of the changes and I've discussed this at length on a few occasions. And that part will be fine. I'm looking forward to moving on with this. However, just expressing our interest in the fact that we're still working on some situations in the Dogwood Valley and Yale that we would like to continue working on over this next year as well. So just for the record that we're, although accepting this and appreciative of the cost savings and the forward movement that we've made on it, we still continue to look for different areas of improvement as well. That's all.
Good. Thank you, Director Damo. Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor, contrary, motion carries.
11.2 is Fraser Valley Regional District North Bend Sewer System Fees and Charges Amendment Bylaw number 1744.
Move Director Johnson. Second, Director Dixon. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, contrary, motion carries.
12.1 is Agricultural Land Commission application for a non-farm use at 8670 Sylvester Road in Electoral Area G.
So moved, Chair Dickey.
Thank you. Castle, seconder. Director Wardenberg, discussion, Director Castle.
Thank you, Chair Dickey. I just want to mention that I'm very excited to see a proposal for a daycare in Area G. We have a lot of young families in the area, and a daycare would definitely provide a huge benefit to the residents. The building in question is characterized in the report as a residential storage building. And those of us in the area know that it was built as a church, and that church had activities and programs for kids in the basement. So I feel like this is a very a good use for this building. It conforms with the OCP and current zoning, and I'm pleased to support it. And I think that we can probably expect to see a site-specific exemption for the flood management bylaw as well. Thank you.
Good. Thank you, Director Castle. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, contrary, motion carries.
12.2 is Development Variance Permit 2024-01 to increase the maximum size for an accessory structure at 52655 Yale Road in Electoral Area D.
Okay, like motion, Director Dixon, second, Director Wardenberg. Discussion, hearing none, all in favor, contrary, motion carries.
12.3 is a frontage waiver for a 2-lot subdivision at 11871 McGimpsey Road in Electoral Area C.
For a motion, Director Wardenberg, second, Director Adamo, discussion. Hearing none, all in favor, contrary motion carries.
13.1.1 is a lease extension for the Chilliwack River Valley Fire Hall.
Motion moved, Director Makahonic, second, Director Dixon, discussion, Director Makahonic.
I just want to say thank you to Stacy and the team for working on this. So it was kind of an interesting process, actually going out and measuring the land with the fire chief and the assistant fire chief, and talking to the Fish and Game Club, and talking to the fire department, and getting my husband to take my scribbled measurements and making it into putting it in CAD, so it looked like something that we could bring forward. And I stopped in at the fire hall Tuesday night on a different matter, and they're pretty darn pleased. And I think the cost is right. It's the same cost, $1 a year, and 25-year lease. So really nice to see something sustainable and for the valley, and just really happy about it. So thank you all for helping out and making it happen.
Thank you, Director Makahonic, and I know for myself, I'm very envious. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, contrary motion carries.
And 13.2.1 is an information item. It's a hazard report for electoral areas.
Information item, discussion. Director Adamo.
Just through the chair to staff. Thank you very much for this. This was eye-opening in quite a few areas, so really enjoyed it and look forward to going through some more of this later on with some of our community members as well. Some good information there. Thank you.
Good, thank you, Director Adamo. I think all of us feel the same. Director Castle.
Thank you, Chair Dickey. I also just want to say thank you for this, another fantastic tool and resource that'll be used to keep our communities safe. I noticed under recommendations for future work, there is a list of hazard identification and assessments that are recommended. One of which is an updated assessment of flood and steep creek mitigation conditions at Norris and Durocher Creeks. I noted that the report on that was in 1999. Blackwell did a report in 2020 of the wildfire hazards. This is something that this is work that we should be advocating to our provincial and federal partners to get on with some of this work. Is that correct? Yes. Okay. Thank you. And I'm wondering, again, we're talking about engagement with Indigenous partners, and I'm wondering if there has been any consultation to discover any work that First Nations may or may not be doing to address some of these hazards. I know that LaCamel's been doing some work in the creeks in Area G, and I'm just wondering if that work is being considered in this report.
Thank you, Director Castle, through the chair. We have a lot of points of contact with LaCamel First Nation, and so we've been aware of the great work they're doing in Area G and Area F, and even elsewhere in Area C, for example. We don't document those kinds of projects or works within this report itself, but we are certainly following with a lot of interest the work they're doing. A subsequent step for our emergency management plan and for this document as well would be to formally engage with LaCamel and with other Indigenous governance bodies. So you'll see us coming forward with some suggestions for how we might spend the recent grant money we received from the province to do that very thing. And it is certainly part of our vision that this hazard report and our EMP are front and center in those conversations.
Good. Thank you, staff. Thank you, Director Castle. That was information item. I don't see any other discussion, so we'll move forward.
Thank you. So moving to 14.1, which is support for Advantage Hope's municipal, regional, and district tax program renewal.
For a motion, Director Adamo, second Director Johnson. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, contrary motion carries.
And section 16, we have two items for information and correspondence. Happy to separate either of those for discussion.
Directors. Here's that people are okay with that.
Okay, so then we would move to reports by electoral area directors.
Okay, Director Johnson, do you want to start off?
Thank you, Chair. I don't have any report this time.
Thank you, Director Adamo.
Thanks very much to the chair, to everyone. Monday had an opportunity to attend a health fair. I was invited by Chihuahua First Nation as well as Fraser Health, and it was a real eye opener to see so many services that were out there providing different services throughout our First Nations, throughout all of the regional districts. So it was great to see everyone coming together. They plan to do another one in the future, and it was a great opportunity to meet Chief Florence of Chihuahua First Nation, as well as all of the service providers. So I would highly encourage any of you, if you have a health fair in your area, coming forward to participate in that. If not anything, just to meet everyone and find out what they have to offer to your communities. I've been regularly attending the Yale ratepayers meetings and have moving forward on a lot of different things throughout that. And so that's been great. They're very active in their community and still seeking approvals to relocate their post office, which has proved to have some challenges recently, but we hope to overcome those and are looking forward to some additional supports from different agencies. I'm having my first official town hall specifically for the Sunshine Valley on March the 30th at 10 a.m. registration, 10:30 it starts. The letters have already gone out to residents and non-residents, and the information has been put onto our Facebook pages for the local community. So I look forward to seeing as many people as possible coming out to that. And a reminder that May 3rd, 4th, and 5th, Sunshine Valley Volunteer Fire Department is hosting the Firefighters Spring Training Program. It's an event that takes place each and every year for both volunteer firefighters throughout the province, as well as paid volunteer or paid firefighters and on-call paid firefighters. There are 24 different presentations taking place and opportunities for specialized training. People can improve their training skills, learn new training skills, and meet fellow firefighters throughout the province. It's hosted in the Sunshine Valley and will be open to about 350 participants, of which we have many already, looking for more from the regional district to participate. And I think that's it. So thanks very much.
Thank you, Director Adamo. Director Wardenberg.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just a few things. I was able to attend the housing summit in Vancouver about a month ago now, in regards to the changes of provincial legislation. I learned a lot there. There's an incredible amount of changes coming, and that will be reflected in change of the bylaws in the regional district. Yeah, so there's a lot to come there, and a lot of work that staff is required to do, and some tight timelines. So that was very informational. Attended a firefighters appreciation dinner with Director Castle and Director Davidson at the DeRoche Hall for the North Fraser Fire Department and the Hemlock Valley Fire Department, and also attended the active transportation meeting at the DeRoche Hall for areas C, F, and G. And yeah, that was very informative and a great turnout. And that's it for me. Thank you.
Good. Thank you, Director Wardenberg. Director Dixon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So start, well, I did attend last night the Upper Fraser Valley Regional Detachment Recognizing Excellence Awards ceremony. And it was an amazing ceremony, actually, with all kinds of recognition for people in our community and actually in the Upper Fraser Valley for just working with the police or just kind of going above and beyond. So it's really interesting just to hear some of the stories of people who are recognized. I was part of the Cultus Lake Water Safety Working Group, and we were all recognized as well just for the work that we've done in trying to make Cultus Lake a safer place for people to boat and swim and use their non-motorized vehicles, and for the First Nations paddlers as well. So that committee that I worked with really did work hard to try to find some way to keep people safe while still having fun. And the biggest outcome was putting buoys around all the way around the lake to clearly mark the slow zone. And reports from especially last summer indicated that people did feel a lot safer and were much more comfortable being out there on their paddle boards and the lakes. And so it was definitely has made a difference in our community, and it was pretty nice to be able to attend along with some of the other members of our community. Switching gears, we in Columbia Valley have the annual Easter event coming up on March 23rd. So we're looking forward to welcoming people up there for pancakes at 9 o'clock and then the Easter egg hunt at 10. And we've got a new group of people that are really interested in organizing community events. So it's fun to be able to be part of that. We've got a Fire Smart event happening April 6th at 9 a.m. That's working together with the Cultus Lake Park Board and with Mr. Schellenberg, and just setting up a community, kind of a community demo day where people can come out and learn what we're looking for. And then there's a follow-up day in May as well. So I'm looking forward to all of that. Thank you.
Good. Director Dixon, Director McAhonig.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the Ann Davis Transition Society did a coldest night of the year walk, raised $50,000. The Chilliwack River Valley volunteer firefighters came out, but they left too soon without getting their toque. So I did a toque delivery on Tuesday night and did some photos, and they were very appreciative of that. And again, I'm really happy about the increase to the land and the lease. So was able to attend the transportation public information meeting with David Urban and staff and Director Dixon, and was able to talk to a fair bit of residents, and it was very interesting and very well done. I think people really appreciated the amount of information that was provided, really good feedback on that. May 6th, we're having a community town hall for Fire Smart with Andrew Schellenberg and Fire Chief Mike Daniluk. And so we're just getting some stuff together so we can put out some information. And stakeholders making program. Oh, and our stakeholders group is still meeting. That's the rural homeless stakeholders meeting. So it's interesting. We have more attendance than others, different times, but we actually there's a lot of interest in, now that we have the funding to be able to get machinery and different things. So all of the bigger ones are cleaned up. We've had a couple of abandoned RVs and different vehicles that have been there for years that are on side roads. And I've had residents contact me, and Neil Moulton the ministry is actually getting them, and they're taking them away. So people are thrilled about that. And I think with the high concern for fires coming up this year, we really want to get it cleaned up. We do have it's not on regional district land, but as you come in, the indigenous property, there's 6 very, very large camps. There's all sorts of activities taking place that are illegal and questionable. And I stopped someone that was abusing about a 4-month-old shepherd here not too long ago. It's really problematic, and I did have an email from Sawali. They had missed the meeting, but I'm going to make a call and hopefully we can do something, because there's been, I think people can see on Facebook, a lot of drone flyovers about the extent of what's really happening, and it's actually quite concerning to see how much is out there. So there's firearms, there's like big, fairly sturdily built places where people are staying, and they're huge. It's quite a situation. And as we move into the better weather and fire concerns, it's just a matter of time. There's something's going to happen. So hoping, and all the stakeholders are quite concerned. So we're trying to see what kinds of resources we can bring, and to be really respectful and mindful of it being Indigenous land, but also to be able to try and connect in a way, because this impacts all of us and the environment that we live in. So that's where we're at with that. And anyway, that's it for me. Thank you.
Good. Thank you, Director McMahonick, and good to hear that the Chilliker Valley is being cleaned up in a large way. Great. Director Castle.
Thank you, Chair Dickey. I appreciate the fulsome reports of my fellow directors, and I'll try to get mine done fairly quickly as to not be accused of holding us back from the beautiful sunshine. Had an opportunity with Directors Davidson and Wardenberg to meet with Chief Bars from North Fraser Fire Department. The chief reports that morale is up, and with over 500 calls responded to with North Fraser in 2023, I was very happy to have an opportunity to thank our volunteer firefighters and their families for their sacrifices to keep our communities safe at the appreciation dinner. I'm also very happy with the relationship between the chief and the area directors, and I look forward to continuing to meet with the chief on an ongoing basis. I was unable to attend the second public consultation meeting regarding the active transportation initiative at DeRoche Hall, but I was pleased to hear from Directors Wardenberg and Davidson that there were many residents from Area G, Nacomin Island specifically, who came out to add their voices to the process. I look forward to the next report from staff regarding the public consultation phase of this initiative. We had an opportunity on a beautiful sunny morning yesterday to visit the shore of the Fraser River near Athey Road with FVRD engineering staff, representatives from Lacamel, the Nacomin Island Improvement District, and others, to get a look at the first-hand look at the extreme scouring of the foreshore along the Fraser River that I first brought to the attention of staff and the board over a year ago. It was noted during our visit that the foreshore of the Fraser River has eroded to the tune of 30 meters in the last 3 years, which is very alarming and of concern to the property owners on the Nacomin Island, which of course includes valuable agricultural lands. I'm happy to see that we seem to be moving forward with getting in to secure the foreshore before the river erodes it all the way to the dike, which would be catastrophic to the area. I'm hoping that we can find ways to expedite the process to get on with the work of keeping our community safe from flooding. I'm also very happy that the FVRD digital sign in downtown DeRoche is up and running again. I did let the Sasquatch Lions know, though, that I would promote their annual garage sale happening on April 6th from 8 to 11 a.m. at DeRoche Hall. I look forward to seeing you all there for pancakes in the morning, prepared by members of the North Fraser Fire Department. That's April 6th. Don't be early, 8 a.m., pancakes and treasures in DeRoche. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Director Castle. Director Davidson.
Thank you, Chair. So I won't repeat the events that Directors Castle and Wardenberg have already mentioned, but I would like to say thank you so much to Director Castle for putting together the Firefighters Appreciation meal. It was great, and the great evening. It's not often I get gluten-free gravy, so it was a big thumbs up for me. Illegal fill is still an interesting not interesting, a challenge. We know there's been articles in the paper already and the media on what's going on in Hatzic. We of course met with the Agricultural Land Commission earlier this month. I was contacted by the Mission City Record for an interview. And also I know that Mission City Record contacted the president and vice president of the Hasek Valley Community Association, Yetta Coons and Ginny Conroy. And they met in person at the site. And while they were there, the trucks were rolling on in. There was no enforcement people there. And I'm sure we may see another article coming up with photos, trucks in the act, bringing in fill. So that remains an ongoing challenge and deep concern in the community. The other thing, just want to use this opportunity, the other concern that's being expressed by the community is around Bill 44 and the essentially the densification of rural areas. And I know that Bill 44 does speak to a process for extensions. I'm not sure where we are, and I can certainly follow up with staff offline, but I haven't heard anything in terms of timelines for getting those extensions in. I know that there's a June cutoff date, I think, and that'll come up really quick. So if staff have anything to add now, that'd be great. Otherwise, I can follow up offline. Thank you.
Staff have anything to add or?
Well, thank you, Chair. Yes, our staff will be bringing forward a report to the next committee meeting that discusses the implementation of the new housing legislation. We'll discuss and look for your direction on extension requests. We do have until roughly June, although we'd like to get an extension request in if that's the will of the board sooner, so that we understand what our timelines are. But you'll see a comprehensive report from us next month.
Good. Thank you, Mr. Danilus. Director Donald.
Apologies. Thanks, Chair, through staff. Thanks very much to Mr. Urban for attending the active transport event in Yale the other night. Both Diane and myself were unable to attend, and there was a very small attendance. However, we did speak about it quite a bit at the Yale ratepayers meeting. They really appreciated you coming out. One of the issues that came up in particular on the night that you chose, and this may sound funny to some, but there's an event that takes place through the Lions Club on a regular basis on Thursdays throughout the Upper Fraser Valley, and it's the Lions Club Bingo that both many residents from Diane's area and my area attend as a bit of a family fundraiser that they do on a regular basis. So let's try to avoid those particular Thursdays for future community gatherings, and that would be greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Good. Thank you, Director Downey. And we have nothing to report on in the Popcom area. Thank you. So I turn things back to our staff.
All right, so we will move to public question period for items relevant to the agenda. I see that we no longer have any members of the public joining us in the boardroom, but we will just turn things over to Jamie Van Ness.
We do have one member of the public still joining us through Zoom, and this would be your opportunity to ask a question relevant to the agenda, and you can just hit the raise hand function to indicate you have a question. And it would appear that our sole viewer does not have a question. We can move on to the next item.
So looking for a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Thank you. Motion, Director Downwell, second, Director Wardenberg. Discussion, hearing none. All in favor, contrary, motion carries. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Enjoy the sunshine.
Thank you, Director Davidson. Thank you, staff. Thank you, directors.